Life is about choice. What to eat, what to read, who to vote for, but also what to buy, and sometimes where to live. We cannot always choose in life, but when we do, we generally consider ourselves very good choosers. We stop, we think, we ponder the pros and cons of every single option, and then finally we choose. What I'm going to be trying to do today is to change the way in which you think about your own ability to take decisions that really go to the best interest of yourself. We just had a break just a few minutes ago, and there were 2 tables where biscuits and fruits were served. Those of you who approach table A, they consume in average 25% more fruits than those who approach table B. Is it just a coincidence? Of course it is not. It happens all the time. We run an experiment. We play on the display of the chocolate and the fruits on the 2 tables, and we try to induce consumption of fruits on table A versus the consumption of chocolate in table B. And that's what happened. Do you start questioning about your ability to take free decisions that go to the best interest in your life? If not, I have another illustration for you. You just met your doctor, and it seems you have to go through a surgery. Well, it is not a good decision, and before giving consent, you would like to ask your doctor how many probabilities of success you have. The doctor knows the answer, and he can tell you that A, 90% of the patients who go through it, they're going to be okay, or he could tell you that 10% of them, they're going to face complications. If he chooses option A, around 70% of us will accept it. But if he says B, only 35% will accept it. Do you start doubting about your ability to make good choices? Perhaps. What I'm trying to illustrate today comes directly from the behavioral sciences, psychology, but also behavioral economics, and some aspects from neurosciences. And what all these disciplines are suggesting us is that we are not as rational as we believe. They are questioning our ability to make good decisions in life. What is behind the mechanism I just showed you in the break example, but also in the doctor one? It is called framing effect. It basically says that every single time we make decision in life, what is around us plays some role. In particular, context matters. Remember that. Context matters. What about this graph? This graph portrays several European countries. And we have 2 groups. We have the green countries with a very low rate, and some other group of countries more significant, which have very low, very high rate. How can we explain such a difference? We're talking about organ donations. In some countries, the green countries, you are not a donor unless you opt in. You choose to become one. You have to do something to become an organ donor if something happens to you. But in the blue countries, you actually are a donor unless you opt out. It's exactly the reverse. The mechanism behind this is called power of inertia. Yes, we are cognitively lazy. We don't like to choose. We tend to stick to a predetermined position, and that means that default matters. I still have a mechanism to show you. It is called social pressure, and you know it very well. We all know that when we spend time with other peers, we change our behavior. We tend to adjust to the behavior of the group. We drink more, we eat more. We can even do more gym if the people around us do so. That means that social context matters too. All what I'm trying to illustrate you today shows that in reality, we rely every single day on mental shortcuts. We get shortcuts to decide, to act, and to survive. We just have too many decisions to take, right? The bottom line is that we think much less than we think we think. This is disruptive, and some people are smiling, even laughing. Some of you are not, because this is disruptive. It is potentially disruptive for our own understanding of our own being, but also of our understanding of society. This is disruptive, and as it is often the case, when it comes to new discoveries, these new discoveries can be used for good or for bad. Well, you won't be surprised to hear that marketers learned about how to use our mental shortcuts many years ago. And what they develop are cognitive traps. We know cognitive traps. These are mechanisms that try to exploit our mental shortcuts in order to reach us and in order to steer our action to sell stuff we don't need and to steer us towards direction we are not necessarily aware of. Well, do you ever wonder why when you go to IKEA, you have to follow a set path? Well, you follow it. You can follow it. You can always opt out, right? But if you do, you're going to get lost. And many of you did, as I did. Why so? Here is a default, but at the same time, there's also framing. Both mechanisms are at stake, and the objective is very clear: to bring you through the whole shop. You're going to see the shop as you watch and you browse the catalog, exactly in the same way. Sometimes marketers, they go even further. To encourage kids to order the full menu when they go to fast food, they give them free toys. Wow. They catch the kids too. And sometimes companies, they even pay for the display, special display that kids can reach in order to buy their products. But of course, kids are not consumers, not themselves are consumers. But we all know that kids can be extremely persuasive when it is about driving family consumption. What about our online experience? We spend more time with the computer than with people these days. What the social online and social media are using to capture our attentions? You won't be surprised to hear they're using our cognitive and our mental shortcuts. They do all the time. What's their goal? To make us click. That's what generates revenue. And in order to do so, they don't hesitate to use bait-click techniques. Weird pictures you see and you really want to click, and we all do click. Not much information there, but the goal is clear. All what these ideas have in common, and all these users are in common, is to exploit our mental shortcuts. It is pretty clear. And it is legitimate to ask ourselves whether society, and in particular public authorities, should not react. Is there a duty? Isn't there a duty of public authorities to protect us from those exploitative use of mental shortcuts? Give you an example. You are about to buy a flight ticket online, and the airline will used to offer you a lot of extra services like insurance, legrooms, extra legrooms, and usually when they do so, they pre-check, they choose for you those options. Why they do? Of course, you know, power of inertia. You're not going to uncheck that box. And if you will try to uncheck that box, well, it will be complicated. You will have to browse down and to identify this little hidden option, no insurance, I don't want it. Now, this practice, being considered to be exploitative, was prohibited by the European Union. They can no longer do it. You are going to be the one checking the box if you really need that service. Other example. You are in Paris and you're looking for a cafe in Paris. That's what they're going to type in. And that's what you get. These are the results. But what about this little charming cafe you heard about, but that didn't really show up there? Yes, that cafe could not afford to pay for any kind of fees to appear on top of the list. What the European Union is asking Google today to somehow help us by showing alternative search engines that will enable us to find exactly that coffee, that little cafe in Paris. Well, it is pretty clear what all these illustrations have in common. They share this effort at somehow limiting the possibility of using mental shortcuts to a bad purpose. And this is time for action, perhaps. It is time to wonder whether we cannot all learn about those practices. And perhaps this is happening. Just think about your employer. If he would like to keep you fit, he could try to steer you towards the stairs instead of towards the elevator, the lift. But also cities these days, municipalities and regions are doing exactly that. In order to collect better and more fines once they've been enacted, well, they can send a letter like this one. Dear Miss Fast Driver, we would like to remind you to pay your fine for excess speed. Most of your fellow, they already pay their fines. Social pressure in action, you belong to the 5% who doesn't. Wow. This will increase, and it does increase all the time, the amount of people who are going to pay their fine. Other examples include the possibility of sometime using footprint, which are on the floor, to lead you to go towards the trash bin, because this will reduce the cost for society to collect waste. And what about text? We receive text all the time, it's pretty intrusive, but it's a way to remind you to do perhaps positive things, like do saving for yourself, or sometimes to pay money and to give money to charities. More and more countries around the world are getting very interested in such an approach. Why? The appeal is clear. Most of these applications are cheap. It doesn't cost much to implement them. But of course, the best thing of it is that they are choice-preserving. They let you opt out all the time. If you want to take the lift instead of the stairs, you can do it. If you want to take the biscuits, you can do it. And many of you did, I know so. What about the flaws? Well, there's a big legitimacy issue. Don't you think that you're better placed than anybody else to think about your interest? Probably you are. And what about ethical issues? Don't you think that you should be informed when somebody is trying to trick you? Perhaps you do. And there's also a further flaw. If we follow this approach too closely, we might give up our ability as a government to intervene when it's needed with more severe actions. Well, at a time in which our rationality seems to be compromised, or at least questions, we should really wonder what we're going to be doing with this. And the answer is, we cannot do anything. We have to act. It is pretty clear by now. We are becoming aware of this. And the bottom line is that no neutral design exists. There will always be someone who deliberately or without realizing will be deciding for you. This is becoming even more interesting today, and perhaps more worryingly. At the time of big data, our countless digital footprint can be collected, stored, and sold by data brokers, and this happens all the time. There's an enormous potential there. It is pretty clear. Public authorities could do the same. Well, next time you smell popcorn when you walk into a movie theater, or you're about to sign a contract which is written in very small print, or your kids are targeted by advertisers, well, you will be under that trap. Should we be worried about this? Should we be scared? I don't think so. I don't think so. The more we are exposed to these practices, the more we talk about those practices, the more we learn how to spot them. They appear behind any corner, but we can learn from them and possibly try to act upon it. And by doing so, I think that our life could be truly the sum of our own choices. Thank you.